What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Five Red Lights. My name's Jesse Finver. With me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Howard Goldberg. Howie, we had a great weekend. How was your weekend? Let me start with that first.
My weekend was filled with a lot of racing and not a lot of sleep. And in addition to the Canadian Grand Prix, it was also Le Mans weekend. So I, from Saturday into Sunday, did not get much sleep. It was a fun weekend. Obviously, I love it. And really great in Le Mans to see Robert Kubica come away with that overall win in the customer Ferrari. Early 2000s, he was one of the rising stars in Formula One. He was it was him and Lewis Hamilton and Seb Vettel were the three superb young drivers. And he left F1, got into rallying, had a horrendous life-threatening crash, somehow worked his way back to Formula One. He was George Russell's teammate at the beginning of his career before Latifi, if you remember from Drive to Survive. Now he's carved himself a very successful spot in endurance racing. And so I think the motorsport world was pretty universally excited for Robert to pull that off. And then, of course, Canada, my boy Kimi, stood on that podium for the first time. They were in Canada, drinking ages 18 everywhere except for Ontario, so he was allowed to enjoy the festivities to an extent.
But he didn't.
To an extent, had to keep Mama Antonelli happy. Had to go home and take some exams in Italy, which is just blasphemous. Yes. As Stephen A. Smith would say, that's blasphemous.
Well, between games of solitaire, of course. Which I'm sure plenty of our listeners understand that reference, as the crossover between NBA basketball and Formula One is significant.
Speaking of solitaire, there's a video that surfaced on social media. One of the IndyCar drivers, I think it was Scott McLaughlin, was playing solitaire in his cockpit while he was on pit road.
Amazing. I do love that. Canada was great. Canada was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's a great race.
Yeah, you texted me as you were watching it. You were traveling on Sunday, so you had to watch on Monday.
Yeah.
You were texting me as you watched it, and you were like, "This is an awesome race. There's so many passes." Like, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It just felt like there was a lot more. So the last couple of races that we had, there was not a lot of overtaking.
Right, and that's we're talking Monaco, Imola, Spain, Miami.
Right. So there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for overtakes, and this was completely different. It felt like there was a stretch in this race where the top six were all within 7 seconds of each other.
And it's when you wanted them to be close. It was towards the end of the race. It was last 15 laps or so.
Exactly. And I think that this is where we need to start, because there was an overtake that occurred that caused a collision that ended a race for one Lando Norris. And it was, now I want to get this right, because the track itself is very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of straights connected by chicanes and a hairpin.
Right. So this track, it was Lando went for it. I think it was turn 10. And
there's I think 14 corners. Yeah, I think 10 is the hairpin.
Yeah, so he went for it on turn 10 and passed him. And then
he braked very late on the inside and got through.
Right, and on turn 13, which is that last chicane before the finish line.
Yeah, Oscar had the inside line, braked late.
And Lando had to brake hard, and then he tried to come back inside. And he said it on the mic, on the radio team radio. He said, that's my mistake. And the announcers were even saying like he was looking like he was looking for an opening, and he took a risk. And it was so interesting because there's a lot of times where these guys will have a wheel on the grass, and it's fine. And in this instance, he was on the grass, and at first I was like, oh, wow, that's like a pretty aggressive like result right there. Not like what he did was aggressive, but for what happened, for what I thought was happening, I was like, wow, I can't believe the grass ripped off his front wing. But he actually hit Oscar's back wheel, and when you had the view from behind of Oscar's car, it looked like he clearly got hit, but it looked like it didn't really affect the car at all, which is very lucky for McLaren. And that ruined. I mean, Lando was done after that, and that is a huge mistake. And you texted me.
Yeah.
You texted me. Let me go to the text.
Yeah, I was watching real time, and I texted Jesse. I was just like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, and I texted you yesterday, and I go, "I'm still waiting to see what this was," and you were like, "Oh, just you wait, like it's coming." But you said,
and he was like, "Oh my God," and I was like, "Sorry, I won't give you any spoilers." He later saw from one of our posts on Threads, he got a notification about Kimi Antonelli's podium. So I was like, "Yeah, that was pretty awesome, but that's not what I was talking about." And he was like, "What? There's something more."
Yeah, you were like, "Oh my God." Yeah.
And I was like, yes, and there will be no posts about that, so you don't get any spoilers. But in my opinion, that collision, obviously avoidable. I don't think anybody's, trying to start a discussion on that. But
100%.
if Lando played that differently, and I get that at that point he was behind Oscar for a decent number of laps, was really itching to get past, was being egged on by his race engineer to get by Oscar. And they probably both thought that there was a chance of a podium because they were faster than Kimi there at the end. They just were squabbling amongst themselves. But if Lando played that differently at the hairpin, instead of diving down the inside, if he just rolled into that corner behind or alongside Oscar, use the straight. That's where you're gonna overtake, not in the hairpin. But
what's difficult in that situation,
I understand what Lando's thinking was because they both had DRS.
Yeah, I was gonna say they both had DRS.
DRS from Kimi, but still, he compromised himself with how late he broke and how tight he had to come out of the hairpin. Oscar was on the outside of him. He was able to get on the power earlier, just because of the angle he was on.
Sure.
And
I mean, the mistake occurred. The mistake occurred at they passed the finish line. It was like into sector 1 almost, where he made that turn, like that inside move. He could have done it differently at turn 10 at the hairpin. He could have done it differently at the chicane at 13 to 14.
Well, he was out of position after the chicane because Oscar had the line. Oscar had the racing line.
He did, but Lando
way later. But because of that, he came out of it slower. Lando had the overspeed. He just picked the wrong way.
Yeah, that's the crux of it.
When they collided, Oscar was on the racing line. The racing line there was all the way out to the left of the track. So and also going into that first corner, if you're overtaking, you want to be on the outside of the corner because it turns into the inside when they swing around the right-hander. So, I mean, to me, Lando trying to go left around him was just a bad decision from the start. And I think that's one of the things that he was referring to immediately afterwards of, I have to look at it, but I mean, right away, I thought that was my fault, and I just have to look at it and figure out, how to cut out those silly mistakes. And at the end of the day, if that's what costs him the championship, that's going to be brutal. But it's a lesson. It's It's a lesson in knowing when to strike and where.
Absolutely. And I found it interesting. You texted me. I said Lando should pass Oscar next lap, and it was probably 4 laps later that he got into that crash. And I go, he's so close, and you go, so close. McLaren's coming back towards Kimi's DRS. Lando's engineer telling him to attack before Oscar gets in the DRS. This is why I don't think he's a champion. Shouldn't have to be told that. It's just another layer to that. This whole
it's
entire
like Saudi Arabia when they were trying to tell him don't overtake Lewis into the final corner, use the DRS on the straight. Otherwise, he's going to get you right back.
He should
it's
know
the same thing.
It's just sound racing tactics that he's not with.
Yeah. And it was interesting. The cool down room, in the podium cool down room after the race, it was really interesting hearing Kimi talk to George and Max about that.
What they say, I didn't get to watch that. So what they say,
and seeing just how aware he was of everything. They showed there's something that happened right before that, which they showed, and then they showed right after they cut to that, and they showed them going through the hairpin, and then they showed him side by side on the straight, and Max and George were like, was it this lap? And right away Kimi was like, yes, this is the lap, because I was trying to decide which one of them to give a slipstream to. And it was just like, from a kid who's done 10 races, just like having the presence of mind in that moment of trying to hold off the 2 fastest cars of the season, having the presence of mind, which one of them would hurt me more if they had a slipstream. And Max had this kind of funny moment where he was just like, so what do you do? Go in the middle? the 3 of them just like laughed about it. It showed Kimi has that ability to expand, I guess, his capacity beyond being able to drive, his mental capacity. He's able to intake other information while racing that car. And that's one of the things that you look for in people who are going to have long, successful careers in F1.
I think this is a good transition to the top 3. Now that you've brought 3 of them up. This was a combination we have yet to see this season. Red Bull Merc. I think this is
not one that we haven't seen, though. A lot of people were like, is this the new Ham Verbach?
Yeah.
Of when Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas used to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. I was thinking the same thing. We haven't seen a Red Bull Mercedes finish probably since Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas finish a couple of years ago. This was the first race, I think, without a McLaren in the top 3.
Yeah.
Which is tough for McLaren.
And it was on pure pace.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was no shenanigans with pit stops or safety cars that put other people ahead of them. It was on qualifying. It was on race pace.
Absolutely. And Mercedes has to feel fantastic after this weekend. Yeah. There's a lot of races left. And I think the constructors we've said the constructors is done. It's been done for a while.
There's still
the drivers' championship.
85 points ahead. 175 points ahead.
Yeah, the drivers' championship. So George won this race.
George is still 62 points behind Oscar, which would be the biggest gap that's ever been overcome. When Max did it in 2022, he was like 50 points behind Charles after 40-something or 50 points behind Charles after Australia, I think it was. I don't see a way George can do it. I think if Red Bull somehow rings a car, Max can. Max is only 43 points behind. So I think that's more possible than George at the moment. They're there has to be
that was my question. That was my question.
There has to be some serious bad luck, like for McLaren. Like Oscar would have to DNF and George would have to win, and still George would be what? That's 47 points away still. Like,
yeah, it's a lot.
He's got a lot of work to do.
So that was my question. My big picture question I wanted to ask. It was about George, and
I
the
get
question is, does George have a shot at this title race? And the answer is really realistically is no, because I have that answer for my own question. But was this the bigger picture thing? Isn't necessarily is he capable of winning the championship this year? I think that George is a future world championship like driver. Like he is that good. But what we're seeing, what we saw this week and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks with Mercedes, is this more of a one-off with this track and the last couple of tracks, or is this going to be what we see from Mercedes the rest of the season? I know that they like you've been on the record on this podcast saying multiple times that you think Mercedes is going to have a distinct advantage with the new regulations just because of how good their new power unit's going to be.
And their
power unit,
they're focusing on next year already.
Right. And they can focus on next year all they want, but if the car this year is doing this and they just won this race on pure pace, and this is a track with a lot of straights, right? That means that this is a fast car still. And you saw Kimi have a great race and held off the fastest car on the track for 7-8 laps there and won and came in third before that safety car came in. I'm not saying we both agree that George is not going to win the championship and Mercedes isn't going to win the constructors.
Correct.
But this feels like a bit of a turning point, or at least a jump from Mercedes after a little bit of a lull from when Lewis and Valtteri were dominating for 5-6 years together to then Max dominating. And now it feels like it's swinging, not swinging back, but more of like Mercedes.
They finally
good to have you back.
They finally put out the car that you expect from the team that won 7 straight championships. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And my feeling on that is what do they gain from pushing the rest of this year? They're already second by 16. They're in second place by 16 points over Ferrari and the constructors. They're not going to gain anything by continuing to put resources in this car. I think one of the things was they have always been fast. They always had been putting that car pretty high up in qualifying. George was always able. George opened the season with like 6 straight podiums. I think one of the issues earlier in the season was a little bit of tire deg. They had trouble keeping their tires alive towards the end of longer runs. And that's partly why we saw Kimi struggle a little bit more at the beginning. I mean, he's still learning. And I think part of the updates that they've brought in the past, 4 or 5 races have addressed that a little bit and has made their car more raceable at the end of stints and has given the drivers, a better tool to run a long race with. And I think the question now turns into, are we going to see Kimi win a race? If they can maintain this kind of form, obviously it depends what type of upgrades other teams bring. If Red Bull and Ferrari look around and say, we're just going to accept our 3rd and 4th place and live to fight next year instead. It'll be interesting. That's, I think, going to be the story of the second half of the year when these teams throw in the towel on the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And to answer your question, when are we going to see? I mean, he already has a pole, right? Or is that for
he had that sprint pole in Miami,
right? So he already has a pole, and he's 18. I mean,
and
it's
we're now
entire. If
getting
this
into
car,
the European season, which is tracks that he knows. You know, he has won a race. He won his first race, I think, in F2 at Hungary or Silverstone, and then he won again at the other one of those two tracks. So, I mean, we're coming up circuits that he's comfortable at and that he's raced at and won at. And yeah, I'm really excited to see Kimi unleashed, if you can say. That's arguably the most impressive thing about this weekend. Kimi's never been to that racetrack before. He, he showed up and immediately was just like pretty on it I mean, not from the start. In FP1 he was 13th, but FP2 he was P3 and right there on pace in quali simulation. So really impressive from him. Yeah, I can't wait to see what his career turns into. I think this weekend opened a lot of eyes for people who haven't already seen how good he is.
So I just looked up. This is Google's AI overview. I need to see where this. So I guess for the Spanish GP, he was plus 5,000 to win a race. So all right, hold on. I guess the best way to do this is the next race is in
Austria.
So Austrian Grand Prix,
which is one of the circuits that they race at in F3 and F2.
So
obviously,
Kimi is
going to do F3.
Kimi's 33-1 to win this race. By
the way, this is not sponsoring gambling. This is just, for us.
But
as a way to say the odds.
If a sportsbook wants to sponsor us, I mean,
but
yeah,
the main thing, please bet responsibly if you bet.
Exactly. But no, I do find it interesting to look at the odds to see what people think the chances are of Kimi winning a race this season.
Yeah.
Now, if he's 33-1 for this race, I mean, I'm not a bookmaker, but I would say it's probably like it's got to be 75 to 100 to 1 to win just one the rest of the season. Or no, it would be less than that. It'd be like 50-1 to win a race the rest of the season, probably. So, I wouldn't rule it out by any means. I would take that 50-1 odds right there. He is incredibly impressive, and I think you bring up. I mean, it's a good point you're bringing up. He knows these tracks coming up.
I mean, that goes for the other rookies too. I'm more excited to see. I mean, Colapinto, we've been pretty hard on him since he took over for Jack Doohan. Had his best weekend in the Alpine. He qualified at 12th, which is a very good effort in that car. Finished ahead of Pierre. So that for him is a good weekend. It's a step in the right direction. He has experience on these circuits from the junior formulas. I'm excited to see, Liam is going back to an environment he's a little more comfortable in. Hopefully he gets more out of that Racing Bull. Ollie and Isaac, I think, have been doing just fine, but here's a chance for them to kind of have their look what I can do moments again. Just fine. What am I saying? I mean, Isaac has been spectacular.
Yeah, I was going to say, so
and Ollie has been above average at most races.
Ollie finished 11th, and Haas has been continuing to make me look stupid. But for the last couple of weeks, everyone's been like, Hadjar this, Hadjar that. He's going to be win Rookie of the Year, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get a podium from Kimi, and Kimi's like, "Don't forget about me, bro. Like, I'm still that guy. I'm still the best rookie here." So I think that's going to be one of the more interesting storylines to look at the rest of the season is this rookie class, which I feel like in the last couple of years, like there's been a lot of turnover with rookies and just guys not sticking. It feels like there's a couple of guys
not really getting chances.
Yeah,
right?
It feels like there's going to be a couple of guys here that are going to be sticking. Like I feel like Ollie is going to stick a lot, like for a while.
Ollie will hang around. Isaac will hang around. I don't think Gabriel was an Audi pick, so he's going to get a couple years of leash, unless somebody really attractive comes on the market and wants to join their project. But I mean, this is a kid who won F2 last year, so
yeah,
there's definite talent there. I think he can showcase that in this European swing, and that's somebody that Audi wanted in their car, not Sauber.
Especially with how good the Sauber has looked recently.
I know, yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to move to next. Nico Hülkenberg.
Yes, let's transition to Nico Hülkenberg, because he is
a P8 finish, more points for that Sauber. I mean, none of us saw that coming, right?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a team
he qualified.
They're now not in last. They're not in last anymore. Alpine is.
Yeah.
Sauber had Nico got points in Australia, and then there was nothing from both drivers for months, and now here we are, and it's back-to-back weeks where he gets P8, right?
Yeah, he was better. He was what? He was better than P8 in what was that last week? Spain wasn't he
last week
better?
Yeah,
he was P5 in Spain.
He got 5th.
Yeah, so in the last 2 weeks he's taken 14 points.
Yeah,
I'm not sure Sauber expected to score that all season. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm being completely honest. I don't know if they expected to score that many points all season.
It's honestly, it's been fun. Like the top of the field has been so set. It feels like, with McLaren just running away with both of these.
Well, and so, not even just that. It was even like watching the race. I had like this moment of every car, because Lewis Hamilton had some floor damage from running over the groundhog.
I saw that. I saw that in the notes. Did he actually hit a groundhog, or like is that like a term?
No, he did. He actually hit a groundhog. There are a bunch of them around the circuit.
Oh no!
There are some rather unsettling images online. If you
I'm good.
Feel like ruining your day. But yeah, as I was watching, it was the first 7 cars. It was the 2 McLarens, the 2 Mercedes, or I guess the first 6 cars because Yuki wasn't up there. But Max, the 2 Mercedes, the 2 McLarens, and Charles all had free pit stops ahead of Lewis. They were just, those 4 teams are just that much further ahead of the rest of the field that, I mean, even lately it feels like Williams is nowhere to be found, right? It's been a pretty disappointing slide from them. But I think that's also coincided with Aston Martin and Sauber finding some pace in the past couple races. So
absolutely,
we're starting to see a little bit of movement, but like you said, that top of the grid is just so locked in. Of those 4 teams are almost driving in a different category than the rest of the field.
Right. And so like when I first got into the sport, I was like why do I care about the rest of these teams? And well, you know what? I mean, that's
where the action is.
Yeah, these teams need to care. Like they do. Like this, they want, like they're still racing. And you know what? Like maybe they're not racing for a championship. P9
and the constructors is separated by 8 points.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. And you know
what? P6 to P10 is separated by 17.
They still like you still get money for where you finish. And if you finish in a certain place, you get more money, and or less money, So these finishes matter for these teams. Sauber jumping Alpine, that's significant. You know, like Alpine going into dead last, like that's going to be like you can't, if you're Alpine. I think they finished 5th last year, right? And now they're going to go into last. That's like a clean house, like fire everybody sort of thing. You know, these are significant things that are happening at the bottom of the field, and it's just as entertaining to me as the top of the field. The top of the field is less entertaining, honestly, because it's just the same thing every week. It's McLaren every week. It's it's Max winning 4 straight years. So this is I'm enjoying this. I've loved seeing Williams excel. I've loved seeing Haas make me look stupid. You know, I've loved seeing Nico Hülkenberg jumping into the top 10 back-to-back weeks, and Fernando Alonso finally getting points the last 2 weeks. It's been great to watch.
Yeah, it really has. And, you know, along with getting money, where you finish in the constructors standings also determines how much, you know, wind tunnel time and CFD, like electronic tools that you get, hours that you get to develop your car.
Right.
And so for a team like Aston Martin, where money is of no object to you, right? Where you know that you have the funding, you don't need to rely on, what is it, the $30 million, that 30 million pounds that comes from P8. Maybe you can slide down to P9, take the 20 million pounds, and get that valuable development resources for Adrian Newey and team to use next year, right? So I don't know how much of that kind of discussion happens, because when you're a competitive team, you want to do as good as you can generally. So, but that might be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, it's been great. It's been really great to see these teams battling. It's not the same boring thing every single week. There's a ton of turnover, and I've loved watching these young drivers fight it out. And you know, the top of the field is always going to be entertaining. It is. Yeah. It's great. It's great that the bottom of the field is honestly just as, if not more, entertaining.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things of this weekend was actually 2 of the midfield cars. Esteban Ocon and Carlos Sainz, they started 15th and 17th, both on hard tires at the start. And they took those hard tires 57 laps into the race.
Which is crazy.
That's an unbelievable stint. It's shades of what Alex Albon did a couple years ago in Australia, to steal a point. It was incredible drive. It ended up moving them both up to 9th and 10th. They both got points out of it. Those are the types of thing you love to see. You love when a team tries something different from the rest of the field and it pays off. You love seeing people get rewarded for those things, and hopefully encouraging them to do more of it in the future.
I think, yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right. Next thing, do you have anything else on the race?
No. I think the next thing is just talking about this extension, right?
Yeah, that's what I was moving into. Towards the end of the weekend, it was announced that the Canadian Grand Prix was extended in additional 6 years. So this current contract was set to expire in 2035. It's now going to expire in 2041. So it's essentially an extra, it's a long-term race extension. I totally messed that up. It was supposed to run until 2029, and now it goes till 2035. So it's essentially a 10-year extension from this year. I had gotten confused with 2041 because of Miami, which is a ridiculous number. But this effective 10-year extension for the Canadian Grand Prix, it kind of poses this question: are these long contracts good for Formula One? Because I think one of the huge discussions we're having as a fan base right now is, why are we racing at so many of these tracks that the cars are too big for, they're too wide for, it doesn't work. And we're setting ourselves up to kind of walk into the same position, right? We know what the regulations are going to be from 2026 to like 2029 or whatever. But like beyond that, it's all complete unknown. Shout out Timothy Chalamet. But like we don't know what those regulations are going to look like. We don't know how big the cars are going to be. We don't know what the power capabilities are going to be. There are already concerns about next year. There have been concerns about next year's car not having the power to get all the way to the end of some of the straights that we race on. Like that long straight in Miami is a concern of, we're going to be running at like 60% engine power 3/4 of the way down the straight. And so you look at them, and Bahrain has a couple long straights. Miami has that really long straight, and also that second long curved straight. Qatar has a long straight.
Hey, Canada
also obviously has that long back straight. So look, I'm not saying that these are bad circuits, because a handful of them do produce really exciting racing. I think the circuits that we're talking about, there's 6 of them, including Canada, that now have 10+ year contracts. Qatar, which runs through 2032, Bahrain through 2036, Silverstone through 2034, Miami through 2041, and Australia through 2037. And I don't think anybody's really upset that Bahrain and Silverstone are extended that long. Those 2 races deliver every year. Qatar is a weird one for me, because that has given us some decent racing. However, they also signed a 11-year contract for that race before anyone ever drove on that track, which is the same thing that happened with Miami with their original contract. So like for me, those are very questionable. I'd much rather see like a 3 to 5 year contract, kind of the way that Bernie used to run it, at least until you know it's a good race.
Miami did deliver this year, though.
Yes, it did. But historically, it hasn't. The first 3 years, it has been fairly boring. I think last year, the year that I went, it was exciting because of how the safety car changed everything. And yes, Lando ended up winning. But like, aside from that, there wasn't all that much passing. And Australia, I think people love Australia, but it's not the best racing anymore. We've sized out of it in terms of the cars. There's not a true braking zone into turn 1 there. It's like a half brake and go through that chicane, kind of. It's a soft chicane. So it kind of takes a little bit out of that DRS zone, that passing spot. And really it's that overtaking zone is really into, what is that, 9-10, where Kimi Antonelli went around the outside of somebody. That quick left-right with gravel traps on both sides.
Isn't that where Oscar went off the track also?
Yeah. Or, there's a DRS zone coming out of that into that right turn. That's also another overtaking zone. But with the current regulations, it's been incredibly hard to overtake there. And so, like, we now have that race for another 12 years. Hopefully, in the next set of regulations next year, slightly smaller cars, not DRS. It's more of a push to pass type of thing. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that can solve some of these problems. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because as more of a casual fan, because there's definite concerns for me as, more of a
I think that you make a great point with the cars sizing out, because my initial thought was like comparing it almost to like baseball stadiums. Now each track, and this is kind of why I fell in love with Formula One opposed to any of the other racing sports. You know, the tracks are all so different. They have their unique personalities. There's the history there. And I mean, some of them are newer, some of them are older, but my initial thought was, you know, I like the long-term contract because, you know, these are places that people get to know and love, and there's history there, and they're all unique, and they provide different challenges. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you know, you are 100% correct that the size of the car really has taken away a lot of what we love about this sport. And it's what we saw in Canada this weekend with all the overtaking and how much more entertaining this race was than the last couple combined. And it's frustrating as a fan, as a casual fan, you know, which I view myself as a casual fan, but more, I mean, I'm host of podcasts at this point. I'm more intense than a casual fan at this point. I'm a casual racing fan. I'll say that. I'm a big F1 fan at this point, but I would say, you know, I mean, I've said this multiple times on this podcast. You know, I wish that the cars were smaller. You know, these cars that, you know, Michael Schumacher was driving. All these guys back in the day, you know, Senna, all these guys. They're all these were smaller cars, and a lot of the track records are still standing from the early 2000s and even earlier than that.
Forget about that. Go look at the cars that they were driving in like 2010, and you'd be shocked at how much smaller it is.
And you could still put the halo, and you could still make these cars safe, you know, and there's no reason for the cars to be this big. It ruins tracks like Monaco and Miami and Spain. It's just frustrating. Though I guess Barcelona's done, right? And they're going to Madrid now.
Yeah. Is Barcelona done?
I think they're done and they're going to Madrid now, but I can't be sure. Either way, it ruins a lot of these tracks that the cars are so big. And I think
we're back in Barcelona next year.
But when's Madrid start?
Next year.
They're taking two. Okay.
Which I thought was the case, because people were like, because they're getting rid of Imola, and so people are like, can't have two races in Italy, but we can have two in Spain.
Yep.
But my thing is more not specific to the cars being too big. It's just that, you know, every 4 to 5 years the cars change, and you have to be able to be flexible with the circuits too, because
I agree. I suggested changes for Monaco.
Yeah, you don't know that the circuits are going to be conducive to the cars, and that's just the bottom line for me.
Yep. So I mean, listen, I think we're on the same page that we'd like to see changes made to tracks if they're going to be making changes to cars. Yeah. I am fine with. I mean, all right, 2041 is it's not a real year. I don't even know if we're making it that far. All right?
It's like when Billy Joel released Miami 2017, and people were like, that year's never gonna come. That's so far away.
Yeah. So like 41, all right, like into the 30s, sure, whatever. You know what? If it means like locking up a TV revenue deal that you need to have Miami,
they're struggling with, by the way. Nobody in America wants to pay to broadcast Formula One.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing.
It's a tough product when you think about it. How do you make money on that broadcast, especially if you're just taking a feed from Sky Sports?
It's just it's like.
But you can't advertise if it's not your show. If you're just taking a feed from Sky Sports, you can't really advertise it.
They still run their commercials. But like you can't run commercials during the race
on that.
I don't know. They have to simulcast it on, like, you know, I don't know.
The key is creating studio programming and pre and post race shows, and that's something that ESPN has never done here.
And they never will.
No, because they're out after this year and don't want to.
And who's taking over? Fox?
Nobody knows.
Sick.
Nobody wants to pay what F1 is asking. They're asking a big price because of the boom in popularity. And there's a lot of speculation it'll be like an Amazon or Apple, given their involvement with the film, or Netflix, because those are the ones that have money and resources at this point. So, yeah,
I'd be okay with Netflix or Apple.
Yeah,
I think Netflix would have to be.
No, I'd be okay with Amazon or Netflix.
Netflix, not Apple. Yeah,
Apple will be like MLS. It'll be another add-on fee every month, and I don't think that will be the way, because that'll be their way of making the money back and not just peppering everybody with ads.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks.
Yeah. Amazon is also already getting into racing on the NASCAR side, building out, a crew. So that'll be interesting. And last thing I want to talk about is, as we're in the TV world already, I think every racing fan knows Top Gear and enjoyed Top Gear, the TV show. And I think most of us know Grand Tour, which is what the guys did when their time on Top Gear ended. They moved over to Amazon. And they are currently rebooting Grand Tour with a new cast. And one of those hosts is going to be TikTok's favorite train enthusiast. The dude who kind of looks like George Russell and wears the camera on his head and runs around looking at trains in England?
Yeah, what's his name again?
That's Francis something.
Francis Bourgeoisie or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't believe it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so at the very least, I'm watching at least one episode.
Are they going to talk about trains?
I don't know.
Amazing.
If it moves, I'll watch. Just give me a sense of my illness.
Get that on a sign and put it behind you above the Monaco poster. I see the Monaco poster behind you.
If it moves, I'll watch. Yeah. This is the Monaco poster Jesse's referring to. It was his gift to me from his time overseas in Le Monégasque region.
That's right. I don't know where mine is. I got to hang a bunch of stuff up in here. But yeah, I think that's all we got for this week. Great race in Canada. We have a break, I believe.
Yeah, we've got a week or two between now and Austria.
Yeah, 10 days from now. It's June 17th. So
the Formula One MSC Cruises Austrian Grand Prix.
So,
which historically Max has been just a beast around this circuit.
That circuit's got they've got a long straight, don't they?
They've got 3 long straights.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days, including today. So 10 days from when this comes out.
Yeah. Three pretty long straights, 3 decent DRS zones. There should be either a lot of passing or one hell of a DRS train.
Yep. And then there's July 4th. And then there's a nice long break between Britain and Belgium. So,
all right. Last thing before we go, just give me a number. That's all you have to do. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. How many cars finished on the lead lap in Canada?
Oh. 6.
8.
8. Oh. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
All right. That's it. That's all I got.
All right, folks. That's it for us this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back We may do an episode next week, but if not, then we'll be back with an episode early July to detail the Austrian Grand Prix. All right. That's it for us. Peace.